Do you all remember that 2016 movie Arrival? It pictured two scientists trying to decode an alien language. The hero in the movie, played by Amy Adams, succeeded. But the question remained: will we as a civilization be able to make contact and decode language if we ever meet with an alien civilization? According to scientists, human contact with aliens is now more possible than ever. In fact, it may happen anytime soon. I'm your host, Michael J. Taifor, founder of Coachy, the life coaching company. Back in 2019, I remember reading a very interesting headline in the famous Washington Post. What it said was, UFO exists and everyone needs to adjust to that fact. From what I remember, the newspaper didn't actually say that aliens have visited Earth. However, it did say that objects are flying around that no one can identify, not even the US Navy. You don't need to be a conspiracy theorist or a rocket scientist to puzzle out what exactly that means. For some strange reason, talk about UFO and aliens has now intensified more than ever before. In Canada alone, more than 1,300 UFO sightings have been reported, up by 46% compared to last year. I wonder if this has anything to do with the pandemic, and more importantly, the lockdowns. Could it be the reason why we have all been grounded? Although most of these sightings have some sort of explanation for them, the rest of them remain very unusual. Triangular objects flying in the sky, series of lights performing maneuvers. Those could not have been stars, planes, or Elon Musk's satellites. So what are they? Could they be aliens visiting us? Could there be life beyond Earth? Watch this report to find out. The year of the pandemic was also the year of the UFOs. A massive statistical analysis showed a spike in UFO sightings in 2020. UFOs of every shape, size, and color.
UFO researcher and book author Cheryl Costa gathered the most detailed analysis of American UFO sighting reports ever assembled. According to her latest book, which is coming out end of this month, Phoenix was the #1 city with the maximum sightings. New York was the #2 city, while Las Vegas came third, and Los Angeles fourth. Their shapes changed as the seasons changed. Triangles showed in winter, cylinders, cigars, and fireballs in fall, circles, spheres, and disks in summer, and teardrops and Saturns in spring. For some mysterious reason, no one understands why, sightings peaked during the lockdown, at a time when people had nothing else to do than look up the skies and gaze at the moon and the stars within our galaxy. Also, the data showed that 65% of sightings occurred during dark hours, around bedtime, while 76% took place on Saturdays. Sightings in Las Vegas occurred mostly around 5 in the morning, the time when bars and casinos closed and drunk people head back to their hotel rooms after a long night of boozing and gambling.
Looking at her data, I could not help but see a pattern repeating itself. People saw these objects while they were lying down to sleep, or going back home after a night out. That's after having a few drinks or more. Also, most of those who recorded the flying objects did so at regular intervals and specific timings. Their videos recorded ambiguous motions, most likely using time-lapse cameras. And not to forget Elon Musk's many satellites circulating our orbit. Now, could this mean that people are only imagining things? Could they be misinterpreting what they saw? Looking at the big picture, I would say yes. However, there's much more to it than simply that. Luckily for us, answers seems to be forthcoming for the first time in our history. When it comes to the inexplicable, things are going to get real soon, and you'd better be prepared for it. This is going to blow your minds off. A detailed government report on UFOs is said to be upcoming. This is happening in the wake of a heated race towards other planets. The documented truth by US spy agencies is expected to come out soon. It will tackle the issue that has been shrouded by mystery for so many years. That is, close encounters of the third kind. The report, due to come out next summer, will detail everything the US government knows about aliens and UFOs. There is a lot of skepticism surrounding it, yet it remains to be seen, when the truth is out, what revelations will unfold.
Last year, the US Pentagon released videos of unidentified flying objects captured by the US Navy. According to former US Senator Harry Reid of Nevada, this was only a scratch on the surface. While Senator Marco Rubio, a leading member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, told a news commentator last month that we have things flying over military installations. And we don't know what it is. It isn't ours. It isn't anything that's registered, and in many cases, exhibits attributes of things we've never seen, the kinds of technology we haven't seen before.
The American people need to be informed. The entire world needs to be informed. Once the truth becomes known, hopefully we'll learn more about our galactic visitors. The surprising question that people are raising at the moment is whether we should exchange embassies once we get to know our interstellar visitors. This is not a joke. UFO fans have recently demanded the UN to put together a protocol allowing embassies for extraterrestrials. Surprisingly, the UN agreed to open a debate only if asked by other member states. This renewed interest in UFOs comes at a time when a UFO disclosure report is due to come out next June. What mysteries will that report unveil if it undeniably states that UFOs are indeed of alien origin?
On the night of March 25, 2021, videos and photographs of a series of fireball lights in the Pacific Northwest night sky gained traction on social media. Some users commenting on the footage claimed the images showed an unidentified flying object. It was later revealed that the light show was caused by the re-entry of the second stage of a Falcon 9, a SpaceX rocket launched on March 4th.
When President Trump signed last December the multi-trillion-dollar relief bill, UFO fans worldwide cheered, not for the financial aid, but for the answers shrouding that mystery for so many years. For some strange reason, nobody seems to know why the 5,500-page bill requested the US spy agencies to release information to the US people. And that information will detail almost all what the government knows about UFOs. How did the space alien revelation provision end up in a virus relief bill? No one seems to know. Even the US spy agencies and the Pentagon seem to be puzzled. It certainly wasn't expected. Not even in our wildest dreams did we expect such a revelation to happen. But it was 2020, the year of the pandemic. Everything was strange about that year. And it was filled with strange events. And even a weirder US president. Now the clock is ticking, and officials have less than 90 days to deliver the news to an anxious world.
The report is expected to show that supersmart aliens have been visiting Earth in peace. This is already generating a lot of excitement among those who believe the truth is out there. U.S. former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe revealed that the Pentagon files could include declassified intelligence of aircraft that exceeded the sound barrier without a sonic boom. Commenting, an international politics expert at Tufts University wrote in the Washington Post, "Does this evidence point toward the prospect of extraterrestrial observation of our planet?" He then added, "Perhaps we need at least to consider the possibility that these unidentified aerial phenomena might also be extraterrestrial in origin." He reminded us that top scientists, including the late Professor Stephen Hawking, have warned against contacting aliens out of fear of catastrophic consequences for humans had they arrived on Earth. He added, "I get the concern from physicists that technologically advanced extraterrestrials might behave as powerful human civilizations have in the past. The assumption is that powerful, technologically advanced civilizations will act destructively." Meanwhile, retired police lieutenant turned UFO investigative reporter Tim McMillan said mystery surrounds the reasons why the Senate Select Intelligence Committee asked Trump to sign off the report so urgently. This remains a matter of debate and mystery. According to McMillan, the fact that the US government has backed up many of the claims of UFO reports provides evidence that something truly anomalous is ongoing. Leading UK flying saucer investigator Philip Mantle said the report, which is due to be released on June 24th, would not reveal all about alien visitations to Earth.
Does this mean that what we'll be hearing on the 24th of June is only part of the truth? And why not all? If it's out there, then why the hell not? Why keep us guessing? And why keep us living in limbo? Like us, governments around the world seem to be puzzled about that report. Will the truth about green men and floating object finally come out? Everyone seems baffled, even world leaders. It's going to be the most exciting event in our recent history, and we cannot wait until it happens. But what will the report say? Will it endorse the photographs of small, glowing, green, floating objects, which were captured in Allington, Connecticut, on the morning of January the 22nd? And what about the other sightings which took place earlier this year? In the past 3 months alone, there have been numerous sightings, all of them strange, all of them puzzling, all of them mind-boggling.
On January the 6th, a resident of Naugatuck, Connecticut spotted at around 6 p.m. an unusual-looking UFO, something similar to a bright, sightly bluish ball of light with rope-like appendages hanging from it. The sphere was followed a short time later by an exceptionally large and loud helicopter. Then on February 4th, A close encounter, possibly of the third kind, lasted only about 40 seconds at around 7 p.m. In Bristol, Indiana, 5 UFO reports have been filed since the beginning of January. On January the 4th, at around 6 p.m., a driver spotted a bluish-green fireball with yellowish flames or a tail flying east to west at what seemed to be warp speed while traveling west toward Hartford on Route 2 West. The UFO simply vanished near the Connecticut River after less than 10 seconds. On the next day, at around 1 in the morning, a skywatcher setting up their telescope saw 14 lights traveling in a big figure-8 pattern in the sky in groups of 2. The observer estimated that the UFOs were traveling at around 500 miles per hour while they formed the pattern, and their dance went on for 3 hours. Later that day, at around 10 p.m., there was another light show or an encore. Watchers reported a flying formation, which lasted for more than 20 minutes, zooming over the neighborhood. One of them recollects, "I saw about 15 strange lights in the sky. They were large and dull in color as they were high above the clouds. A dozen of them were white and flying extremely fast in sync with each other, making swirly shapes together. These lights would disappear for a while and reappear every so often. Surrounding them were 3 black stagnant dim lights in an almost triangular shape." On the morning of the next day, the mysterious flying pattern was spotted by another Bristol resident, who reportedly described them as bluish and white circles moving in a figure-8 formation repeatedly for a few hours. The January the 5th UFOs were also spotted further southwest over western Florida. A resident depicted a large, bright white teardrop-shaped object with a neon green interior, which crossed the road low in the night sky around 5:30 p.m. Its movement was swift, similar to a shooting star, but the object was much bigger and traveling low in the sky. In Walcott, Connecticut, that same night, a woman and her boyfriend were sitting in her car when she saw a group of 3 lights circling in the sky. The show only lasted for few seconds. On the 24th of the same month, shortly after 7 a.m., there was a report of a falling UFO right above Bristol with brilliant streaks from all sides, similar to a spacecraft re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. The suspected UFO then disappeared behind the tree line over the horizon to the east. A couple of months later, on March 16th, shortly before 7:30 a.m., a perfect line of lights was spotted in the sky above Bristol for about 15 seconds. 6 more fireballs appeared over Moosup, Connecticut 8 days later at around 7:30 p.m., but unlike the East Hartford phenomena, these moved with intent and intelligence, according to watchers. 2 of them moved or floated. The one on the left went from left to right and the other from top to bottom, while the rest stayed in one place. The UFO dance continued for about 5 minutes before it dissipated.
Are these encounters of the third kind for real? Or simply a figment of people's imagination? Or perhaps a prank? Almost 20 years ago, Sir Richard Branson, founder of Virgin, pulled one on April's Fool's Day. Here's the story of how it all happened.
In a new blog post on the Virgin website, the business magnate reflected on 50 years of April 1st jokes, which he described as one of his favorite pastimes of the year. Branson's proudest effort occurred when his company flew a UFO over London. It was a hot air balloon decked out with a silver casing and some flashing lights. By the time we'd reached the motorway, it was beginning to get light, he recalls. We could see every single vehicle grinding to a halt and hundreds of people looking up at the UFO flying over them. It was great fun watching their reactions. The Virgin team had even written Virgin Galactic Airways on the side of the flying saucer, long before its commercial space brand became a reality. What Branson and his crew didn't realize while they admired their handiwork, however, was that 3 police forces had been mobilized and the army alerted. The UFO sighting was also being reported on radio and TV stations. The police surrounded us and then sent one lone policeman with his truncheon across the field to greet the aliens, he continued. The UFO's door opened very slowly, with plenty of dry ice billowing from it. An ET, or someone in an ET costume, walked down the platform towards the policeman, who quickly spun around and sprinted off back to where he had come from. The prank almost landed the wealthy billionaire in jail.
A recent survey has found that more than 10% of UK people believed they saw a UFO. Year after year, sightings of UFOs flood the web all over the world. No one knows if those accounts are real or not. No one even knows if those aircraft are experimental or extraterrestrial. Yet, there remains too much controversy. The controversy surrounding what Neil Armstrong saw on the moon, or that 8-foot snake that astronaut Franklin Musgrave saw floating behind him in space, which he could not explain. I remember him saying, the more you fly in space, the more you see things that you cannot believe. He seemed to believe with some certainty that other living creatures are out there. Some could be primitive, others could be just proteins coming together, or amino acids and single-cell organisms. If those other civilizations have been there for millions of years, then they could be of just about anything, any kind of unimaginable things. No one knows, and no one seems to admit to anything. Until now, the probabilities of living creatures elsewhere are almost none. Like everyone else, I'm hoping that this US report would shed light on things once and for all. That's when it comes out, in a couple of months' time. But I seriously doubt that this will happen. I doubt that the US government will offer an anxious world a proof of alien life and an alien civilization, the same way it withheld information when it declassified the JFK assassination files. No way will the US make public claims that they have made contact with aliens.
For decades now, ufologists, or the individuals who study UFOs, have been asking their government to release information related to extraterrestrial contacts with US pilots and astronauts. But all they declassified were piecemeal information about UFO sightings, in the form of memos that were censored in the name of national security. Till now, the Biden administration seems to be willing to follow up the previous administration's directive. However, many US intelligence agencies are citing national security to resist attempts to release additional information related to unexplained aerial phenomena. Nevertheless, the UFO research community believes the Biden administration will do what no previous US presidential administration has ever done, that is to fully acknowledge the existence of extraterrestrial aliens who have visited this planet.
I remember the days when I used to watch every single episode of the famous US television series, The X-Files. Like everyone else, I used to ask myself the question time and time again, are we alone in the universe? Is the truth out there?
The soon-to-be-released file may help answer this question. Yet, there will be no smoking gun revealing alien bodies on ice, or evidence suggesting that such contacts have occurred many times, or acknowledgement that US intelligence agencies have been actively concealing information and engaging in disinformation campaigns to discredit credible witnesses to these encounters of the third kind.
Some dared to come out with the truth without fear of government reprisal.
Gareth Frank Bale, a Welsh professional footballer who plays for Premier League club Tottenham Hotspur, told his teammate Joe Rodden on Tottenham's YouTube channel that he once saw a UFO, and that the United States government has videos about them. Aliens exist 100%, added the player on loan from Real Madrid. For the Pentagon to comply with the Senate's instructions, it would need to provide a current assessment of what the US military and the federal government either know or suspect about the unidentified vehicles that have been flitting around restricted airspace for quite some time now. However, many serious observers do not even entertain the thought that the unclassified version of the report will contain any of the astounding, earth-shattering information people expect from their government. That's if the report is delivered at all. Yet, 3 former directors of national intelligence have given public interviews declaring their belief that the report will indeed arrive and that the military is likely to say that whatever those things are, they're not ours, and they don't believe that we think it's the Russians or the Chinese either.
So what then? Will the US government announce to the US people and to the world that UFOs of all sorts are traveling US space without them knowing who built them or where they came from? This would leave people sarcastically referred to by ufologists as normies, with more unanswered questions. Some normies might actually develop more anxieties, even fear and panic attacks, while UFO weirdos will gloat with the normal "I told you so." Yet, as far as normal people like you and me are concerned, such revelation could open our eyes to the wide varieties that our universe holds. It would offer us a once-in-a-lifetime chance to re-examine our place in the universe. Most definitely, the report will not come out and say, "Yeah, we've been storing crashed UFOs and dead alien bodies in Area 51 since the 1950s. We wanted to let you know, but hey, we didn't get around it ourselves." If they did, it would be amazing. But they won't. They are too smart to admit to something so foolish.
String theorist Michio Kaku, who is professor of physics at the City College and City University of New York, has had several books published including New York Times bestsellers Physics of the Impossible, Physics of the Future, and The Future of the Mind. He previously told ABC documentary UFOs, Seeing is Believing, that he thinks it is extremely unlikely that extraterrestrials have ever visited Earth, but that we must keep our minds open to the possible existence of civilizations a million years ahead of us in technology. He added that if Earth does go ahead and try to make contact with other civilizations, we should do so very carefully, despite his belief that they would ultimately be friendly. He said, "Soon we'll have the Webb telescope up in orbit and we'll have thousands of planets to look at, and that's why I think the chances are quite high that we may make contact with an alien civilization. There are some colleagues of mine that believe we should reach out to them. I think that's a terrible idea," he added. "We all know what happened to Montezuma when he met Cortez in Mexico so many hundreds of years ago."
By the way, for those of us who don't know our history, here's the story.
The meeting between Montezuma and Cortez is a true story that changed history. That dramatic encounter between Montezuma and Hernando Cortez completely overturned what we know about the Spanish conquest of the Americas. On November 8, 1519, the Spanish conquistador Hernando Cortez first met Montezuma, the Aztec emperor, at the entrance to the capital city of Tenochtitlan. This introduction, the prelude to the Spanish seizure of Mexico City and European colonization of the mainland of the Americas, has long been the symbol of Cortez's bold and brilliant military genius. Montezuma, on the other hand, is remembered as a coward who gave away a vast empire and touched off a wave of colonial invasions across the hemisphere.
So are we afraid to give our earthly empire to space invaders? Did the New York professor make his conclusions because he believed that aliens are coming to Earth to colonize us? Others who share his views fear that Elon Musk and his plan to cover Earth with so many satellites would attract aliens. But let's think more clearly about it for a second and open our minds to it. Couldn't those super smart aliens be visiting us in peace? Would it be a mistake to assume that we can learn a lot from our next-door neighbors? No wonder that recent news referred to UFOs as advanced alien threats and anomalous aerial vehicles. These stories are coming out at a time when we should be grateful that we are living in an age when the truth is finally coming out. I remember I was 18 years old when Steven Spielberg gave us E.T. E.T., the extraterrestrial, did not only gather glowing reviews, but also incredible box office earnings. By then, Steven Spielberg had made a name for himself. Only 7 months after his hit film Jaws, he came back with E.T., which made him the unrivaled champion of Hollywood. Whatever he touched turned gold. Be it Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or Raiders of the Lost Ark, he won them all. Yet, there was no sequel of E.T., and the reason behind it is that it would have robbed the original E.T. of its virginity. Let's not forget that the E.T. story was one of childhood and friendship, while the sequel would have been quite vicious, surreal, and violent. Now there is a reason why I'm telling you the Spielberg story 40 years after it happened. A recent survey in the US has found that almost 1 in 7 think that aliens like E.T. will take over our Earth by 2040.
Former Ministry of Defense civil servant Nick Pope, who handled reports of aliens, predicts hard evidence will emerge this year. He told The Sun that 2021's going to be a big year for UFO stories, particularly with the US Department of Defense due to reveal information. This survey demonstrates that beliefs in UFOs and the extraterrestrial are widespread and that there is a real appetite among the general population for evidence to be made public, he told the British tabloid. More than a quarter think the UK should have a military plan ready for an alien invasion, according to the survey by one poll to Mark Blaze TV's Extraterrestrial Week.
Today, there are too many fears among people that aliens could be our invaders. Instead of coming in peace, they will be coming with fire and thunder. Such ideas have been ingrained in our minds by recent movies like The War of the Worlds and the newer one, Extinction. This is exactly how people perceive aliens, invaders of the worst kind.
The survey, which sampled 2,000 UK adults, answered questions regarding their experiences with UFOs. It looked at human interactions with all things extraterrestrial and unidentified aerial phenomena. According to 52% of respondents, panic and fear would be the immediate reaction if aliens were proven to be visiting our planet. Philip Mantle, Director of Investigations for the British UFO Research Association, who supervised the survey alongside Pope, interviewed several people who claimed to have had close encounters by alleged contact or abduction. One of them said he was frightened to death at the time of the abduction and continues to be scared till this very day. Mantle, who heard numerous accounts throughout his career, explained that it is the fear of the unknown that drives us. It can be scary sometimes because those experiences, whatever they are, could happen to anyone, at any place, at any time. So, it's not something one can predict, it's not something people can protect themselves against. However, to the best of my knowledge, he said, nobody has ever been physically harmed by these encounters.
Well, easy for him to say. He's never been abducted by aliens.
A recent NASA study estimated that there should be at least 4 habitable planets nearly 32 light-years of Earth. This is the equivalent of about 300 trillion kilometers away from Earth, the closest thing to a cosmic stone's throw away. Those planets could be receiving our television and radio broadcasts dating back to the 1990s. But could aliens living there understand them? Too many daunting questions, too few answers. If astronomers were to observe Earth from another solar system, could they say that our planet is teeming with life? By examining Earth in the same way that we look at exoplanets, planets orbiting other stars, we might improve our chances of detecting alien organisms on distant worlds, researchers recently suggested. Since 1999, a process for spotting exoplanets, known as the transit method, has revealed thousands of worlds by measuring fleeting dips in the brightness of the stars that the planets orbit. No one knows whether or not these worlds host life, but if scientists were to peer at Earth using the transit method, they would likely spot definitive signatures of life. Once those signatures have been identified from Earth observations, experts could then look for those same clues in exoplanets. Scientists recently described this approach as a mission concept called Earth Transit Observer. Most of the exoplanets we know about were found through that transit method, says NASA. Powerful telescopes, such as the Kepler Space Telescope and the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, can detect when the passage of an orbiting planet briefly dimmed a star's light, even for stars that are thousands of light years away. Scientists can estimate how big such a planet is, based on how much light it blocks. They can also calculate the size of its orbital path by measuring how much time passes between dimming events. A host star's size and temperature, and how near or far the planet is from the star, provide more clues about how hospitable to life an exoplanet might be. Transits can also hint at an exoplanet's atmosphere. During a transit, a star's light filters through atmospheric molecules, which absorb certain frequencies. The result can help researchers to identify elements such as oxygen and methane. However, such signatures are typically so small that astronomers need dozens of transit observations to confirm that these elements are present, the NASA scientists pointed out. However, other factors on the planet and star can also affect readings of atmospheric molecules. For example, planets experience shifts in their seasons, weather patterns, and ocean currents, while solar activity, such as the ebb and flow of solar winds and the formation of powerful solar storms, is also highly variable. Any of these conditions could shape atmospheric behavior during different transits, potentially affecting ratios of atmospheric molecules and elements, according to the U.S. Space Agency.
Is there evidence that we have ever been invaded by aliens? According to one astrophysicist, the answer is yes. He argues that signs of intelligent extraterrestrial life have appeared in our skies. But what's the evidence behind his extraordinary claim?
On October 19, 2017, a Canadian astronomer named Robert Wegg was reviewing images captured by a telescope known as Pan-STARRS 1 when he noticed something strange. The telescope is situated atop Haleakala, a 10,000-foot volcanic peak on the island of Maui, and it scans the sky each night, recording the results with the world's highest definition camera. It's designed to hunt for near-Earth objects, which are mostly asteroids whose paths bring them into our planet's astronomical neighborhood and which travel at an average velocity of some 40,000 miles an hour. The dot of light that caught Wegg's attention was moving more than 4 times that speed, at almost 200,000 miles per hour. Wegg alerted colleagues, who began tracking the dot from other observatories. The more they looked, the more puzzling its behavior seemed. The object was small, with an area roughly that of a city block. As it tumbled through space, its brightness varied so much, by a factor of 10, that it had to have a very odd shape. Either it was long and skinny, like a cosmic cigar, or flat and round, like a celestial pizza. Instead of swinging around the sun on an elliptical path, it was zipping away more or less in a straight line. The bright dot, astronomers concluded, was something never before seen. It was an interstellar object, a visitor from far beyond the solar system that was just passing through. It became known as Oumuamua, from the Hawaiian, meaning, roughly, scout. Even interstellar objects have to obey the law of gravity, but Oumuamua raced along as if propelled by an extra force. Comets get an added kick thanks to the gases they throw off, which form their signature tails. Oumuamua, though, didn't have a tail. Nor did the telescopes trained on it find evidence of any of the byproducts normally associated with outgassing, like water vapor or dust. This is an unusual object, a video produced by NASA observed. And, unfortunately, no more new observations of Oumuamua are possible because it's already too dim and far away. As astronomers pored over the data, they excluded one theory after another. Oumuamua's weird motion couldn't be accounted for by a collision with another object, or by interactions with the solar wind, or by a phenomenon that's known, after a 19th-century Polish engineer, as the Yarkowski effect. One group of researchers decided that the best explanation was that Oumuamua was a miniature comet whose tail had gone undetected because of its unusual chemical composition. Another group argued that Oumuamua was composed mostly of frozen hydrogen. This hypothesis, a variation on the mini-comet idea, had the advantage of explaining the object's peculiar shape. By the time it reached our solar system, it had mostly melted away, like an ice cube on the sidewalk.
On the 26th of January 2021, the university professor published a book about this extraordinary phenomenon. It is often said that a picture paints 1,000 words, but in the Harvard professor's case, the picture was worth 66,000 words. That is the length of his new book, Extraterrestrial.
According to Professor Avi Loeb, former chair of the astronomy department at Harvard University, founding director of Harvard's Black Hole Initiative, and director of the Institute for Theory and Computation at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, Oumuamua could have been a natural rock or an artificial object manufactured by an extraterrestrial civilization. But for now, the latter interpretation remains a hypothesis suggested by evidence that this object did not behave like a comet or an asteroid from the solar system. The many anomalies exhibited by Oumuamua forced all natural interpretations of it to invoke object types that we have never seen before, all with major drawbacks. They include the hypothesis that it's a hydrogen iceberg, but that would likely have evaporated by absorbing starlight during its journey, a dust bunny 100 times more rarefied than air, but that might not have the material strength to withstand heating to hundreds of degrees by the sun, or a tidal disruption relic, which would not have the pancake-like shape inferred for Oumuamua. But in the future, Professor Loeb says we might be able to snap such a picture of another interstellar visitor. When I find a single ant while surveying a small portion of my kitchen, I get alarmed because it implies that there must be many more ants out there. The Pan-STARRS telescope discovered Oumuamua while surveying the sky for only a few years. It is therefore likely to find another object of its type every few years. The Legacy Survey of Space and Time on the Vera C. Rubin Observatory will start collecting data in less than 3 years and should find many more Oumuamua-like objects, possibly a new one each month. The Harvard professor believes that identifying artificial objects among the asteroids and comets in the solar system is similar to searching for rare plastic bottles among the natural rocks on a beach. How can we obtain resolved images of weird interstellar objects to separate them from rocks? He asked. He spoke of 2 approaches. One is to deploy numerous cameras in advance within the orbit of the Earth around the Sun so that one of them will be close enough to the path of an interstellar object of interest. Another strategy is to launch a dedicated spacecraft equipped with a camera as soon as LSST identifies a weird interstellar object on its approach towards us. According to him, a camera aperture with a diameter of 4 inches can resolve an Oumuamua-like object with the size of a football field at a distance comparable to the diameter of the Earth. Having a camera in such proximity to an object passing at random within the plane bounded by the orbit of the Earth around the Sun would require deploying 100 million cameras across that region, a staggering requirement. The number of cameras can be reduced by many orders of magnitude if they are attached to a propulsion system that can bring them to the right location at the right time when the object of interest arrives there. Of course, an intriguing photograph could motivate a follow-up mission of landing on the object and deciphering its purpose based on its composition. It would be particularly exciting to uncover a label stating made on Planet X or to discover something like the golden record aboard the Voyager 1 and 2 missions that we sent out of the solar system, he noted. Alternatively, a warning of more than a year from LSST about an approaching object of interest would allow the launch of a space mission from Earth that would intercept its orbit. This strategy resembles asteroid intercept missions, such as OSIRIS-REx, which visited the asteroid Bennu and will return a sample from it to Earth in 2023. Other targets of interest involve interstellar objects trapped by the gravitational fishing net of Jupiter and the Sun, or interstellar meteors that reach the surface of Earth. We could also explore the Moon as an archaeological site, since it collected everything that impacted its surface, given that it lacks an atmosphere or geological activity, the professor said. Photography of interstellar artifacts will usher the new frontier of space archaeology, a field of space research noteworthy of mainstream attention just like traditional archaeology on Earth. Decades from now, the effort to study past technological civilizations based on the relics they left behind could be routine on academic campuses. Most stars formed billions of years before the Sun, and therefore technological civilizations that predated us had the opportunity to develop more advanced equipment than our century-old technologies. We could learn from them even if most of the equipment they deployed in space is not operational after billions of years. Finding their relics in our backyard saves us the long trip to their point of origin. By putting our hands on such equipment and attempting to reproduce it on Earth, we can save many millennia of our technological development. Given this perspective, our technological future may lie in front of our eyes if we can only master the will to harness the evidence and not assume that it's never aliens. Rather than argue that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, we should collect as much evidence as possible without prejudice, keeping in mind that extraordinary conservatism leads to extraordinary ignorance, he concluded.
The big question that remains is, if we do find alien life, what will it look like? In other words, when the aliens arrive, what will they look like? And more importantly, we've been trying to contact them for ages. How come they never wanted to contact us? Well, at least people my age remember the 1980 Pink Floyd song, "Is There Anybody Out There?" in their famous album, The Wall. For as long as humans have existed, they have pondered the mystery of extraterrestrial life.
After Nicholas Copernicus introduced the heliocentric theory to 16th century Europe, astronomers began to dream about other worlds and populate them with imaginary creatures. Pioneering astronomers such as Johannes Kepler, father of planetary motion, and William Herschel, discoverer of Uranus, believed in the existence of alien life. Peering through his telescope, Herschel thought he spied towns and forests on the lunar surface.
It's now been more than 3 centuries that Herschel died, and yet we are still looking, and the search field is incredibly big. Astronomers estimate that there are more than 100 billion planets in our Milky Way alone. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. Could it be that we are looking in all the wrong places? Is it possible that we may find alien life somewhere else? One zoologist claims that he has all the right answers. He even suggests that some answers may be hiding in plain sight, right here in our home, planet Earth.
In a hilariously provocative new book, The Zoologist's Guide to the Galaxy, Eric Kirschenbaum contends that life on Earth provides hints of what we might expect to find on other planets. Kirschenbaum, a scientist at the University of Cambridge, asserts that the universal laws of biology that govern life on Earth also apply to aliens. The most important is that species evolve by natural selection, the bedrock idea of evolutionary biology proposed by Charles Darwin. No matter how alien biochemistry might work and no matter how planetary environments might differ, Kirschenbaum argues that some version of Darwinian selection would be at work and would have channeled alien evolution to restricted menus of possibilities. Thus, Kirschenbaum predicts that alien life will bear striking parallels to earthly life. Most aliens will be bilaterally symmetrical and use familiar forms of locomotion, such as legs, paddles, or jets.
But do they have sex? Apparently, the zoologist does not have the answer to that question. It seems that aliens have been good at keeping that private, along with everything else. The book avoids fantasizing about what aliens look like, hence, no little green men. But since big brains come with big imagination, the zoologist offers some otherworldly ideas. His book muses that aliens could have possibly given us life, which makes us Earthlings an experiment conducted by a superior intelligence. So where are all the aliens? Could they be trapped in underground oceans?
A planetary scientist says subterranean water worlds are likely common in the galaxy and probably even better for life than Earth-like environments. Should an intelligent species arise beneath the frozen crust, however, they'd find themselves in perpetual isolation, in what is a possible solution to the Fermi paradox. Several moons in our solar system feature vast oceans of liquid water covered in a thick layer of ice. These include Europa, Titan, and Enceladus, and they represent tantalizing targets in the search for extraterrestrial life in our solar system. Indeed, these moons, in orbit around Jupiter and Saturn, have warm interiors, the result of immense tidal forces caused by the gravitational tugging of their gigantic host planets. Excitingly, there's a lot of complex chemistry going on inside these liquid oceans, leading astrobiologists to wonder if these environments are habitable, and, if so, currently hosting alien lifeforms, whether they be bacteria like microorganisms or 16-tentacled bioluminescent sharks. Another exciting thing about these interior water-ocean worlds is that they're located outside of our solar system's habitable zone. Given the surprising prevalence of these worlds in our solar system, Alan Stern, a planetary scientist at Southwest Research Institute, says they are likely to be common in extrasolar planetary systems as well. What's more, Stern makes the case that interior oceans worlds can be more conducive to life than worlds with surface ecosystems and an advantage for the development and maintenance of life. In his one-page report, Stern argues that the habitability of such worlds isn't dependent upon specific types of stars, the need for host planets to avoid eccentric orbits, or the distance to host stars. Among other factors, Stern says underground ocean worlds don't even need a sun at all to be habitable, about moons in orbit around rogue planets. To be clear, rogue planets, also known as unbound planets, are known to exist, but astronomers have yet to detect a moon around one. Astronomers say trillions of free-floating planets could be careening through the Milky Way, so if Stern is right about their potential to host habitable moons, that would represent a significant reservoir of life in the galaxy. Interior water-ocean worlds also have a built-in defense system, according to Stern. Any life that emerges in these watery worlds is protected, not by an atmosphere, but by a thick frozen crust that can measure tens of miles deep. This layer confers environmental stability against external threats, offering protection from numerous existential dangers, whether they be asteroids, solar flares, space radiation, extreme climate cycles, and nearby supernovae explosions, according to Stern. Frustratingly, however, this same protective shell could make it next to impossible for astronomers on Earth to detect any life beneath the frozen surface. Indeed, not only would that require mind-bogglingly sophisticated telescopic technology, but also the capacity to detect exomoons, which, perhaps surprisingly, is still beyond our grasp. Yes, even though astronomers have confirmed the presence of over 4,300 exoplanets, they have yet to confirm a single exomoon around any one of them. Stern's key hypothesis is that these interior ocean worlds could contain life at higher rates than on planets like Earth. More speculatively, he also wonders if these planets might spawn intelligent life and to what extent these aquatic aliens might develop inside their subterranean domains. If this is possible, a big if, as Stern admits, these extraterrestrial beings would be permanently cut off from the surface and everything beyond that.
This sounds like an amazing premise to a sci-fi novel. Then you have Elon Musk, the Tesla and SpaceX billionaire. Last month, he tweeted saying that aliens do not exist. That's some hell of a departure from the time he tweeted that he was actually an alien. Not only that, but he claimed in 2020 that Egyptian pyramids were made by extraterrestrials. He seems to have changed his mind over the subject. His post on the early morning of March the 23rd concluded that extraterrestrials do not exist due to most images showing floating blobs. And that was his argument, the strongest one I've ever heard so far. I'm not sure what's with these billionaires. One billionaire started a riot in Washington, D.C., which led to the occupation of the US Congress, using only his tweets, while the other created a huge debate on Twitter into whether aliens existed or not.
Artificial intelligence scientist Lex Fridman was among those who disagreed with the tweet, saying this is exactly what an alien would tweet. Entrepreneur Amit Paranjapay added that since the birth of smartphones, random UFO sightings have dropped. Musk's latest flip-flopping opinion that aliens do not exist came just 2 days after the US government said it has evidence of UFOs breaking the sound barrier. Regardless of whether the billionaire believes that aliens existed or not, his ever-increasing mega-constellation of Starlink satellites is making us visible to them. That's according to the author behind a new paper accepted for publication in the Journal of the British Interplanetary Society. If there are advanced alien civilizations out there on distant planets looking at Earth through telescopes, they don't know we're here, the paper's author said. Aside from a trace of wholly artificial CFC gases in our atmosphere, there's so very little observable evidence that humans exist, or ever existed, on this planet, if it was viewed through a telescope from afar, he added. The author believed that the Starlink satellites are changing that. However, it will take about 800 years before Starlink makes Earth visible to any distant alien telescopes trained on Earth. According to the paper, Starlink is one of our civilization's first mega constructions that take us closer to having our first techno-signature. SpaceX plans on launching as many as 12,000 satellites by 2030 and possibly as many as 40,000 in the longer term. Thanks to Musk and SpaceX, those in areas of the globe currently without fast internet access, nearly half of humanity may be able to get online via Starlink. Zaza Osmanoff, a professor in astrophysics at the Free University of Tbilisi, Georgia, estimated that the Very Large Telescope in Chile and China's Fast Radio Telescope could eventually find Starlink if they were in deep space. Osmanoff reckons that in 1,000 years our civilization could be showing off itself to instruments like the Very Large Telescope on planets up to 260 light-years away. Such instruments would be able to detect any megastructure around Earth in the infrared from that distance. However, for SpaceX's Starlink constellation alone to show up in any searches would take about 800 years. That's a lot of Falcon 9 launches.
According to a recent Gallup poll, roughly a third of Americans believe that aliens have visited our planet, with approximately 20% saying they have seen a UFO themselves. Some of them celebrities who've made contact with aliens from the great beyond.
From Post Malone, who claims to have seen multiple UFOs throughout his life, including one outside his bedroom window in upstate New York when he was 16, to Kurt Russell, who was one of the first pilots to report seeing one of the largest mass-reported UFO sightings of all time as he flew in Phoenix in 1997, and finally pop singer Demi Lovato, who's not only seen UFOs, but she's determined to make contact with aliens through mass meditation. Last October, Lovato shared images and video of what she claims to be UFOs she spotted on a retreat in Joshua Tree with friends. Funnily enough, one of the friends happened to be Dr. Stephen Greer, who according to his Instagram bio is one of the world's foremost authorities on the subject of UFOs, ET intelligence, and initiating peaceful contact with ET civilizations. An article published online in Paper magazine quoted Lovato saying that over the past few months she has dug deep into the science of consciousness and experienced not only peace and serenity as I've never known, but I also have witnessed the most incredibly profound sightings both in the sky as well as feet away from me. She then went on to say that the planet is currently on a negative trajectory and that if we were to get 1% of the population to meditate and make contact, we would force our governments to acknowledge the truth about extraterrestrial life among us and change our destructive habits destroying our planet. Talking to Rick Owens for interview, Miley Cyrus revealed that she was chased down by some sort of UFO one night while she and a friend were driving through San Bernardino. The best way to describe it is a flying snowplow, Cyrus recalled. It had this big plow in the front of it and was glowing yellow. I did see it flying, and my friend saw it, too. According to Paper magazine, the former Disney Channel star did admit that it could have been the weed wax she had bought off a guy in a van in front of a taco shop, but there were a couple of other cars on the road, and they also stopped to look, so I think what I saw was real. Cyrus goes on to say that she didn't feel threatened but that she did make eye contact with some sort of being that was in the front flying the spacecraft and that it left her shaken for 5 days afterward. Former Blink-182 musician, Tom DeLonge, is said to have founded the To the Stars Academy, which employs former CIA agents and conducts UFO research that has reportedly even been cited by the New York Times. Last year, DeLonge and his organization not only succeeded in getting the U.S. Navy to verify footage of purported UFOs that they had uncovered but also got the Pentagon to declassify 3 of those videos of unidentified aerial phenomenon. It can be argued that this set off a chain of events that saw the Pentagon set up a task force to address the UFO problem, while the CIA releases thousands of their reports, and a former head of the Israeli space program claims that aliens had already been on Earth, observing for some time figuring out whether or not we were ready to join their galactic federation.
But it was 2020, so we can let all fly under the radar.
According to Reuters, the star of the Nanny TV show is not only convinced that she was abducted by aliens in her youth, but they were the reason she and her ex-husband, Peter Mark Jacobson, actually ended up meeting. In a 2012 interview with the Huffington Post, Fran Drescher said that both had similar experiences seeing aliens while they were driving with their respective fathers before they had even met. Years later, Drescher noticed they had the same scar in the same place on their hands and said she believes that's where the aliens implanted a chip. In 2017, singer Kesha explained that the UFOs on the cover of her album, Rainbows, were inspired by her sightings. Prefacing that she was stone-cold sober at the time, Kesha says that she saw 5 to 7 lights in the night sky over Joshua Tree that disappeared and returned in different formations. I don't know why I didn't try to take a picture of it, I just looked at it, she later said. In 2019, country music singer Casey Musgraves claimed to have spotted quite a few UFOs. One encounter Musgraves distinctly remembers happened while she was in Mexico for a friend's wedding. We were on the beach around 11 at night. I noticed something hovering above the corner of the hotel. In the night sky, it kind of looked like the underbelly of a bird. Having alerted her friends to the strange object illuminated by the hotel's floodlights, Musgraves goes on to add, we all watched it for a minute, and then it changed shape into an X pattern, like a windmill shape. It was so weird. We were like, oh shit, that is so not a bird. We watched the thing for a good 10 or 15 minutes. Then it started glowing and doing things that nothing normal would do. It was crazy.
Well, she was right about one thing. Oh shit, it is crazy. How to contact an alien civilization? Scientist Frank Drake developed an equation to determine if radio contact with aliens is possible. It is referred to as the Drake equation.
Take the rate of formation of stars in our galaxy capable of supporting intelligent life, multiply by the fraction of those stars with planets, then by the fraction of those planets capable of supporting any sort of life, then by the fraction of those on which any life evolves, and then the fraction of life that evolves into intelligent life, and this gives a figure of how many intelligent species there are in our galaxy. Next, estimate what fraction of intelligent life will develop civilizations capable of sending communications, and factor in how long those alien civilizations will survive, and how likely it is that radio contact will ever be made can be calculated. The problem is, although there is a rough estimate on some of these numbers, there is not enough information to fill them all in. How often does life evolve on planets like Earth? Asks King's College's Professor David K. Johnson. Are planets like Earth the only ones capable of supporting life? How often does it become intelligent? How long does it last? This can only be estimated, he contends. On liberal estimates, the galaxy should be teeming with intelligent life sending out signals. But the absence of such signals is said to be evidence that all civilizations, including alien civilizations, annihilate themselves almost as soon as they develop such capabilities. This wouldn't bode well. On conservative estimates, however, the possibility of intelligent life in our galaxy is relatively rare. Humans might be all there is, says the King's College professor. Of course, the universe contains about 2 trillion galaxies, so it's likely that alien civilizations evolved somewhere else in the universe. But given the long distances between galaxies, detecting signals from them shouldn't be expected. So not hearing any signals isn't necessarily a warning. Given the enormous distances between stars and the fact that faster-than-light travel is theoretically impossible, it just doesn't seem that physical travel from one planet to another is easy. Still, given other considerations, visits from alien civilizations might at least be possible. Sci-fi writer Arthur C. Clarke put it best in 2001, A Space Odyssey. He said, "Even if it took centuries to travel from star to star, this might be no obstacle to sufficiently determined explorers." The technique of hibernation was one possible answer. Another was the self-contained artificial world, embarking on voyages that might last for many generations. And why should one assume that all intelligent species were as short-lived as man? There might be creatures in the universe to whom a 1,000-year voyage would present nothing more than slight boredom. And are we certain that the speed of light is an unbreakable barrier? Even if it could not be defied, it might be evaded. Indeed, what would make such long journeys difficult is the fragility of biological bodies, says Dr. Johnson. But what if those bodies are replaced with machines? Or what if intelligent machines could be built and sent out to explore? Even journeys that would take millions of years would be easy, he added. It's no coincidence that the first explorers of the universe were machines, the Voyager spacecraft, which set off in 1977.
The search for alien life has so far focused on habitable environments. But what if we looked at dead worlds, perhaps even seeding them with life?
In a paper published this month in the journal Astrobiology, astrobiologist Charles Cockle of the University of Edinburgh in the UK makes the case that focusing entirely on living worlds leaves out an enormous and potentially informative percentage of the cosmos. The mind-bogglingly large spaces between planets, as well as places like the burning sun and frigid moon, are all presumably devoid of life. Even Earth, which we consider to be teeming with life, is largely uninhabitable, with a thin biosphere situated on the surface but a largely dead interior, Cockle told Life Science. Surveying lifeless worlds could help scientists learn exactly what percentage of the universe is uninhabitable, what proportion is potentially habitable but just lacking in life, and whether some worlds are partially empty and partially covered in life. After organisms emerged during the dawn of our planet, they are thought to have proliferated to fill every habitable environment they could find. Yet the details of this process are still only hazily understood, and Cockle thinks dead worlds could help provide scientific insight into fundamental questions such as the limits of where life can exist and how living things colonize uninhabited areas. Dead worlds could also provide a clean slate, where scientists could start the experiment of life from scratch. If researchers were to release small quantities of microbes into lifeless environments, they could learn how quickly organisms spread, the sequence in which different species take over, and how living things alter the local chemistry and eventually start to co-evolve with a planet, he added. Future astronauts on a base on Mars might discover the best bacteria to introduce into its surface to make it productive for crops. Determining the right place to conduct such an experiment might prove tricky. It is not entirely clear which places in the solar system are dead. Many astrobiologists think the ice-covered oceans of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn are good bets to find life, but Cockle pointed out that some environments can be habitable yet are still uninhabited. So, if the watery depths of Jupiter's Europa or Saturn's Enceladus were to prove lifeless, perhaps it could be informative to unleash bacteria into them and monitor them over an enormous time span, such as 10,000 years. It would be like the Star Trek Genesis experiment, he said, referring to a fictional device capable of generating an entire biosphere on a dead body.
No one seems to be sure whether life, alien life, existed outside our planet or not. And if this alien life was so intelligent, why would it come here? Perhaps a time will come when we stretch our eyes to see other inhabited planets like ours. And even if it proves that intelligent life outside our planet is full of green aliens with scary eyes and a desire to invade us and to destroy our civilization, we would still want to learn about them. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama himself, once said, and I quote, "We Buddhists have always held that firm conviction that there exists life and civilization on other planets in the many systems of the universe, and so many of them are so highly developed that they are superior to our own.